But Spencer and Martin are both really good friends of mine, and I'm proud to see them speaking today.
Thank you very much. Good afternoon, everybody. Just to give you a little bit of introduction, my name is Paul Negus. I'm the Managing Director of Genus. We're over on stand M3 in the middle of the hall. I just want to go back to a little story we had from the Museum and Heritage Show last year, when we were approached by a client who was talking to us about our digitization services. We sell equipment and we actually digitize items as well for the museum and archive world. They wanted to know whether we could capture objects in 3D. And we had to say, well, no, but we're looking into it. But I'm happy to say this year we can actually answer that question, and we do offer the service now as well. And you can see the machine in action on our stand. What we've done with the three companies is offered more than just the 3D object capture. We do the actual consult on how you want to capture it and what you want to do with those objects afterwards. We do the capture from Genus itself, and then we create the experiences with those objects that ATS do as the final part of the jigsaw, with digitization IO doing the starting process. So I just wanted to introduce that today and explain that it's the three organizations working together on a new semi-automatic photogrammetry process. So I shall hand over now to the guys to tell you more about what we do.
Hello everyone. As Paul said, this journey really started for us last year as three companies coming together, and we thought, Spencer and I, we were talking about how to present this today, and we thought we'd just have a conversation and reflect on the journey over the last 12 months and the reasons why, and ultimately the impact of 3D, why it enables us to get closer to the story, and really the impetus for the three companies to come together and offer those unified services of consult, capture and create. So I guess the first sort of conversation point is why 3D?
That's right. I think just to say, this conversation that Paul mentioned last year, someone was talking about digitizing a collection, and ATS being digital content and storytelling. I was kind of going straight to the storytelling bit and got Martin involved to talk about, well, how would we capture this thing in 3D? Because once you've got it, I don't know, we had this point, we all remember back in 2020, when we all closed our doors and then everything went online, and I do mean everything kind of went online, and everyone pushed content up online. The thing is, they weren't really experiences, were they? They would tend to it was just content. So I think we learned a lot from there, as far as you can't just shove stuff up there and it be an experience. So when we got chatting at the show with this wanting to digitize, we needed to work out the technology part first, and then the story bit comes a little bit later. So yeah.
And that's where our conversation led. My background, I'll give you a little bit about my background. So I've been working with digitization.io, which is just me and my good friend and colleague Jeff, who's at the back filming right now. There's just two of us. We have about 30 years worth of combined experience in digitization. And myself, I'm a qualified archivist. And for many years, I worked at the Postal Museum, and I was head of digital there. And we started experimenting with 3D techniques because we were trying to get to the heart of the objects that we didn't put on display, the objects that were very, very hard to put in front of the public, and how do we do that in a way that's satisfying, informative and engaging. So we started playing around with 3D quite a few years ago, and that was my background into it, and Spencer knew that. So when the impetus happened here last year, Spencer came straight across to the stand, and we were lucky because we were just across the way from each other, and that conversation started. And for me, why digitization and 3D digitization is something that is a compelling case now, or more of an increasingly a compelling case, is the engagement that it can provide, the opportunities. The creative engagement in terms of the types of streams, the mediums in which 3D can actually be populated, not just online in collections browsers or on websites. It has a longer life, a much wider set of possibilities.
It does, and I think this getting to the capture. So we said, well, how are we going to capture these to start with? Martin had quite a lot of experience of digitising at the Postal Museum, running the digitisation department there. And you gave me a story of, you did the ashes, right?
Yeah. So back in 2019, the museum was doing a knowledge share with another museum. It happened to be Marylebone Cricket Club, Lord's Cricket Ground. And we got talking, and they said, "Hey, wouldn't it be great if you could do a 3D of the Ashes urn?" So we actually went ahead and did that, and the timescales and the care that we had to make to create that 3D object. It took 2 days to capture it. It was over 5,000 photographs. It was very, very manual, intensely manual. So at the back of my mind, when I'm having this conversation last year with Spencer, the question was, well, how do we make that repeatable? How do we cut down the variables in the capture to make it, first of all, a viable technology to deploy and also reasonably costed? It's very manual processes are very, very expensive in man hours and those sorts of expenses. If we can automate the routines as much as possible, we can actually cut down some of those variables, cut down some of those costs. So we use a technique called photogrammetry. You may have heard of photogrammetry. There's lots of different ways to capture information of an object to turn into a 3D model. You can use lasers, you can use infrared, you can use structured light. The process that we use is photogrammetry, which is effectively photography. It's photography done in a consistent and measurable way with lots of overlaps between each photograph around an object, so it's non-invasive, and then a computer program assembles those images, looks for control points. You know, there's a feature in that photograph that is repeated in this photograph and that photograph and that photograph, and then the photogrammetry program computes those points to produce a point cloud. Once you have that point cloud, you can build a mesh. Once you've got the mesh, you can build a texture and use all of the color information from those original photographs to create the 3D object itself. So that's how the process works. So that's the technique that we deploy. And if you want to come over to Genesis stand, you can actually see how we've automated it, because we have the robot there. It's working, sort of doing a demo, and feel free to come over and you can see it happening.
Yeah, I think the big challenge for us when we were chatting to the potential client last year was, okay, they had 300 objects, and Martin's telling me it took him 2 weeks to do one. Suddenly the cost is just ridiculous, and it's just not viable, especially for small museums. We wanted to find a solution that was scalable, repeatable, but really high quality. So we had to get the time down, and essentially the guys went off when we found this problem and found this brand new piece of kit, which is on the stand being shown. So over this last year, we've been understanding how it works, doing lots of testing on it, but also getting the business model right. You know, can this be affordable? And we really think we've got something down that you could do, well, 7 to 14 objects a day is what we're looking at, probably automated, where back in the day that would have taken you weeks and weeks of work. So
absolutely,
immediately we're doing that, but the quality's the same. It's really fantastic stuff that we're seeing the results of some of these objects. Some are quite tricky though, right? You get
some are very tricky.
Diamonds
And very, very hard. The model car that we have on the thing was a nightmare.
But other
things. The kind of objects that are challenging are shiny objects that are featureless. We have ways of making those objects work as models. So there's techniques that we employ, polarization and other techniques to make sure that we capture as much detail as we can and reproduce the object. So we can show you all of those on the stands as well if you want to see those. I think
going back, the first driver was archiving, which wasn't where I came from. So I was understanding, once you've got this 3D model, what format is it in? Why would an archivist care about having a 3D photogrammetry model as opposed to anything else or photographs?
Well, how many organisations have online catalogues? Where you show all of your collections, your archives, your museum objects, and you might have 2D images of an item in your collection. There are now plugins for 3D display in online catalogues. There's a whole site called Sketchfab dedicated to 3D objects. You can go on there, there's loads of museums on there displaying objects that you can go and explore, you can embed in websites, you can do all of that kind of thing. IIIF, I don't know if you know IIIF, the International Image Interoperability Framework. It's about standardizing the way that images, especially large images, are produced and displayed on websites. So that technology, that framework is adapting now to also be able to bring 3D objects into the framework. That framework sits behind a lot of online catalogues now, and so a lot of catalogues are IIIF compliant. So as that develops, the 3D object display will also be available. So alongside documentation, which is where your online catalogues come in and all those sorts of things, not only do you have that, but there are other drivers, and the other drivers really come down to engagement. And we realised this, that there were lots of people having conversations with Spencer and his team, because they want to use and exploit those 3D assets potentially in lots of different ways, in all sorts of things, the guides that you produce, but there's a lot more out there, isn't there?
There is, because we were used to kind of recreating models. So you'd have an object that was in a museum. We say, well, our 3D developers would build that from scratch, and then they would put the material over the top of it and make it look like as close to the original as possible. But what gets me is like, why would we do it this way as opposed to building it from scratch? And if you come and see it, you can just see the absolute detail in it's super high res.
You can.
The actual object.
I was blown away when we did the Ashes back in 2019. I was blown away because you could actually see where it had broken and had been repaired by conservators. And that's the other side effect of actually doing photogrammetry. You get very, very good conservation snapshot of an object. You get these very, very high resolution images of an object that you can hive off and store as a conservation record. You get the 3D model, and you get all of the possibilities from that 3D model as well. So, yeah, documentation is one thing, engagement is the key.
But then big bit about ATS, if you notice, it's around the storytelling, and then we work out what the best technology is, depending on how you want to tell that story and where. So a lot of the time we did a lot of on-site interpretation, so you'd be doing guides and maybe videos and screens, touch screens. But over lockdown, we were doing it before, but we had a huge demand for online experiences as well, which is why I come back to you could put the whole archive online, row by row, table by table of all your photographs of all your objects, but it's not really an experience for maybe the casual visitor or someone who's done a search online because they've seen a television program and they're interested now in, some sort of, the Royal Crown at the weekend. There was a lot of searches for the Crown, and there was an AR app that you could download. So traffic was getting driven to the organisations via people just searching. So that's how people tend to find the objects. They're not necessarily going to your museum to then have a look and peruse your whole collection. What they're doing is, well, what am I interested in at the moment? They search and they find it. So the opportunity is now to go, well, if we're getting this growing audience online, as well as on site, but online, how can we take that authentic story, which museums are fantastic at telling on site, and bringing it onto a website or an app or through audio, whatever it needs to be. So, we've done a couple of projects of late where we've created these things by 3D. So we did the Enigma machine for Bletchley Park, and they're very expensive and very old. So to take them around to schools is quite a high risk on insurance and kids having a go and playing around, but they wanted to show it. So we created a digital simulator of it that you can access online. But now we've done this, and wow, we could have photogrammetried the real Enigma machine, then added the simulation to that. So when you're showing it on the screen or it's on a tablet or in another device, it's the actual Enigma machine. And for me, it's that little step up of authenticity of it's the real thing, I think makes a massive difference.
Absolutely. Yeah. Objects, being able to see those objects for real, the authenticity purpose. And going back to what you just said about online and on-site, I think in the same way that over the last 3 years, an awful lot of us have got used to hybrid working, where sometimes we're in the office and sometimes we're not. I know that's not a situation for everybody, but broadly speaking, a lot of us have had to experience that. In the same way, museum visits, there's the hybrid museum, the concept of people driving their interest online and being interested, and also then inspiring them to come in, that kind of sense of a hybridity in terms of what you're displaying and where and when and the context of that, whether it's on site, whether it's in a gallery exhibition, whether it's in your collections browser, whether whether it's on the road, on whatever you're doing. The idea that those collections have a life beyond the glass case,
absolutely,
beyond the museum's doors.
And often, we all talk about putting those objects in context and telling the story around it. Well, often that teapot was never on display; it was in use, and actually it came across on a galleon, and so we've got this wonderful story of where this teapot ended up. So we kind of took that 3D model, and then we've put in some nice web design around it that it feels like you're immersed in this. It's linear, but it pops up with various items and layers of content that you can go into, so you can hear sound effects. We've done some lovely binaural sound around it. So you could be in there and you could spend maybe just a couple of minutes, but a couple of minutes of being immersed. I use the word immersive lightly.
Definitely
it's
lightly.
Slightly overused in our sector, I find. But but actually you will gain attraction. Someone will stay there and dwell for a couple of minutes, having a nice story told to them, and then being able to shoot off and have a look at maybe other objects in the collection. So it's definitely an opportunity where if you had a look at these kind of star objects you start with, create a mini story around them that's available online or on an app, and then look at how you can then signpost and send visitors off to other areas. I think huge opportunity there, getting that longer term engagement.
I think there's a sense of thinking about 3D as this huge sort of technological thing where you have to wear a VR helmet or an AR experience, and that you have that, but it's not that. There are those experiences out there, but actually museums are actually using it in a slightly different take, using 3D technologies. They've taken from the gaming industry. There's a few exhibitions doing the rounds now. We have prepared, I did prepare slides for this, but we decided to just have a conversation. But there is that one. It was just like we've been there with 3D. Let me get to the nub of what I was talking about, which is this. So this is at the Ashmolean right now. And what they've done, they've partnered up with a games developer, Assassin's Creed. I don't know if anybody's played that game, but they go to ancient Greece, and they've actually used the game because of all the assets that have been created from research in museums to create the 3D models. And now they've embedded it in the museum, so in the museum exhibition. So it's not just the stories, bits and pieces that are enhanced by the 3D content that's created for a game. They're not the only ones to do this. As you can see, there's the recreation. It looks fantastic. So that's on at the Ashmolean right now. There's another one going on in Winchester, which is 878. Same sort of thing. Games developers, they've gone back to Anglo-Saxon times, and they use the game and the 3D assets as contextual, the scene setting. You can see you've got live performers, performative stories going on with the game sort of scapes and the 3D objects, the renders they've made of the objects alongside the real objects that you can see. So these kind of mix, when I talked about hybrid, this is one of the kind of things that I had in mind. Let me stop that. There we go. Oh, yeah, there's online. I'm getting away now. I'm going to go back.
But I think the point is, once you've captured this object, it's in the highest quality resolution that you can in your archive, but then you can link to and use across all these different channels. And I think that's where we've looked. Well, we'll put it in a web. You could put it into a Unity game environment with VR goggles. No reason why not.
You can put it into a dome. One of the things that we looked at TPM, we had some workshops where we were doing interactive workshops with people with disabilities, and we tried them with all the traditional VR type of headsets from Google Glasses all the way up to the big headsets. And our findings were that people want social experiences. 3D as a thing that you wear isn't a social experience by and large. So being able to have a social experience in a 3D environment makes a whole lot more sense. It brings out that experience. So doing things in interactive domes and other ways is a way of actually, making these situations feel far more real than were you wearing the heavy headset.
Yeah.
Because who wants to do that?
A bit of the audience. I'd say there's definitely, there are people wanting that, but the point is you capture it once and it can be used across all these. I think that's the thing, the economies of scale for me is that makes a better business case, that you can scan it all, have this amazing piece. We can then go off and animate it and add things to it. We've added sound effects and stuff to the BRM that we've done just to play around with and go, well, okay, that's more fun than just looking at an image or a series of photographs. How do we take this next bit?
There's some fantastic uses of 3D objects. There's the Royal Mint Museum down in Wales. They did a whole project a year or two ago during the pandemic where they created resources that went out on loan to retirement homes and residential homes for people to have reminiscence sessions, and they were using artifacts that they got and replicas of things to send out for people who would never be able to come to a museum or very unlikely to come to a museum to see those things. So they were able to take that stuff out using 3D printed objects and everything else that they had in the pack to actually reach out rather than, just wonder what they could do.
Yeah.
So, yeah. How are we doing for time?
Are we on it? Fantastic. No, we're on time.
Are we done? We've got 10 minutes.
It's like we rehearsed this.
We did, isn't it? Yeah.
Like we rehearsed it.
See, I made loads of slides and Spencer said, no, we just have a conversation.
Does anybody have any questions? Because I do.
Come on.
Does anybody have any questions before I ask? What does the word collaboration mean to you guys?
Say again?
What does the word collaboration mean?
What's the word collaboration mean?
Means communication for us. I mean...
You want to say that?
Sorry. I missed that question.
What does collaboration mean to you?
To us?
Yeah.
Is it working? Oh, yeah. Collaboration is working with the client and with ourselves to get the end result that the end user needs to experience. So it's even engaging the end client, the end customer as well.
Yeah.
And it's non-competitive.
No, I think what we found over this year when we were on the stand and the person started talking to me about one thing, and I was like, well, actually, we don't do that, but I know that would be amazing if we had the product. So what we found over collaboration over the last year is finding the technology, which these guys led on. We've been playing around with the tech around it to go, well, how do we present it better? So we're not competing at all.
Yeah. I mean, for me, the digitization IO, we don't sell kit, we don't sell, those kind of things. What we sell is our knowledge and our expertise. Jeff and I have, as I said earlier, 30 plus years of experience. We've seen a lot of things. We've made a lot of mistakes over that time too. So we know a lot of the pitfalls that go on. And for us, the biggest thing that we do is listen. Because we have all sorts of different clients from different backgrounds, large institutions, small associations, individuals, and being able to look clearly through their needs and help them work out what it is they're actually hoping to achieve. That for me is the first bit of collaboration. And then as we formulate the plan with them, then we bring in the services that are on offer from these guys.
The hired help.
The hard help.
Yeah.
Any other questions?
Hi there. Yeah, can I just ask about optimization? You scan this in the highest resolution possible, but just in terms of how automatic is the optimization process?
Yeah. Well, we have the machine actually running on the stand. So if anybody wants to see it running for real, please do come over. It's on M3. That's right, your stand. The way it works, it's a motion control rig. It's controlled by a computer, and essentially there is a revolving turntable. You put the object on the turntable. The rig has a scanner that briefly scans the object to work out its dimensions, and then from there it automates the process of deciding how many photographs it needs to do all of the overlap ready for the photogrammetry software to do its thing. So that's the bit that's automated. Once it's decided, you press the button and it does all of the camera manipulations, it moves the turntable. Now that is the process that took me 2 days when we did the ashes, because we took 5,000 photographs of an object that size. So in terms of efficiencies, it reduces days and many hours, even with a normal sort of object of reasonable sort of simplicity, from maybe an hour down to 10 or 15 minutes. It does it, as automated as we can make it. The difficult process after that, the thing that remains very manual, is processing the images afterwards. And if you've got 600, 700, even 1,000 images, you've got to process them, put them through the photogrammetry software and build the model. So that's the bit that we haven't automated yet. It'd be very nice if we could. We keep our eyes on what's happening. There's lots of developments in AI and machine. There's a thing called neural radiance fields that allow you, with very, very few inputs, to create fly-throughs of things. Something you might be interested in, Spencer, actually. But they're looking at now extracting object data from that too. So there are developments that might automate those processes beyond. But they're very early days and they're quite low quality at the moment. So what we offer with the automation is something that most people probably can't do themselves. I mean, if you wanted to go and do some photogrammetry and try it out for yourselves, the power is in your phones. So you can get your phone out, you can download an app. There's things like Polycam, there's apps like Scenario, and you can go around and photograph something with your camera phone, and it will assemble a model. You won't get the detail of the kind of resolutions and quality that we get with our machine, because we're just employing bigger sensors, more megapixels, and all of those variables that we've cut down to make sure that we're only capturing exactly what we need. But feel free to try that process. It's actually quite good fun. You can do lots of things with the models afterwards. So have a look around your house, go and find an object, I don't know. My wife's got a load of Lilliput lanes she inherited, so I actually did that during the pandemic. That was my project. So I was going around, I've got my little turntable, my camera, and I was doing Lilliput lanes. So yeah, you can see it for yourself how it works, but the machine that we have and the processes we follow are much more rigorous. So yeah, that's how. Does that answer your question?
Hi, Martin. Just a curious question. What's the largest object you can do?
The largest object on the machine, so the machine will do anything that's quite small, all the way up to about the size of a human being. So if you've got mannequins where you want to digitize dresses or uniforms or anything like that, then you can actually put a mannequin on there and do that. So anything that sort of size, small amounts of furniture, small size furniture, chairs, that sort of thing. 2 small models, tiny little figurines, that sort of thing. Anything bigger than that is beyond what our robot can accommodate, but you can still digitize in 3D those things. It just becomes a much more manual process. It becomes something that you're walking around the object with a camera on a tripod or something like that, or on a dolly. Yeah.
Any other questions? No?
Stephen, is my mic on? I kicked your butt in Star Wars.
You did.
So we played online and I kicked his butt. So as much as he's in gaming, I was better.
You were, you
Yeah,
were.
yeah.
Although if I remember, Russell really kicked both of our butts.
No, I went filling on both
you?
of his. Yeah. But any other questions? All right, do you guys have any more comments? All right, thank you very much.